covering the deadly shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. Let's listen in.
News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good day. We're coming on the air with breaking news. There has been a shooting at a Christian elementary school in Nashville, Tennessee. Officials from the hospital confirmed 3 children were pronounced dead after suffering gunshot wounds. Authorities say the gunman is also dead. We want to go to NBC's Steve Patterson. Steve, what have you gathered so far?
Lester, it's a limited amount of information. Obviously, this is a fast-breaking story. It's unfolding as we speak, but the limited information we do have is already heartbreaking. As you say, these 3 students were shot. They were transferred to a local hospital, a children's hospital in Vanderbilt, nearby where this was. And then those 3 children were pronounced dead at that hospital. We're also hearing that the shooter, as you mentioned, died during a confrontation with police. The local police describe it as being engaged by officers. Now, we don't know if that resulted in an exchange of gunfire and that's how the shooter was down, or if that gunfire was self-inflicted, but the shooter is reported down. That's the latest. We're learning more about the setting that this took place as well, this Covenant School, a private Christian grade school. About 200 students, ages preschool to 6th grade. We're hearing that the students were reunited with their parents, the ones that were able to get out after this shooting, their hands up. Obviously, that scene that we've seen so many times in these school shooting settings, but we just don't have any information about how this necessarily unfolded, how it started, how it's progressing, what police are investigating at this time, besides the obvious warning to the public that has now been extinguished with the fact that they say that the shooter is down in this case. But obviously, a lot of people, worried, nervous about their children, worried about this community, in what we hear often in these shootings that occur at schools. Lester.
And we're referring to the shooter as a gunman. Do we have any real characterization on anything about the shooter at this point?
I have not seen an age. I have not seen a name. We don't know anything about the shooter at this point yet, Lester.
Yeah, again, this school is an elementary school for preschool through 6th grade, so we're talking very young children, obviously. Let me bring in Frank Figluzzi. He's an NBC News national security analyst. Frank, we saw some of those photos a moment ago, kids arm in arm being walked out. We've seen it too many times before. You think of these young kids, they are growing up in an environment where active shooter drills and may be part of their existence at that school, certainly many schools around the country. What are some of the first questions you'd be asking right now?
Yeah, this is indeed an all too familiar scene, but law enforcement in the greater Nashville area is very well oiled and partnered together. So you'll see a combined federal, state, county, and local response, likely ATF and FBI from the federal side, because the weapon becomes important. That's ATF. And then, of course, the motivation. What is behind any ideology or reason for this madness? FBI will come in and assist and offer cyber forensics, et cetera. But, as familiar as this scene is, Lester, there's also some discrepancies or anomalies that jump out right now. First of all, very rare to have a private school experience a school shooting. As we were going on the air, I was beginning to research that. It is not common at all. The private school environment is seen as more able to control the environment and the enrollment. Not so many rules and regulations and governance. So parents feel very commonly that it's safer to send their children to school. This is a Presbyterian private school, and of course an elementary school. Again, we've seen that happen, of course, infamously in Connecticut at Sandy Hook, but not all that common. So we've got these 2 factors here. And the first thing you have to think of is the relationship between the shooter and the school. Likely that this is not simply a random walk-in, but rather some connection is likely there. That will be researched immediately. And of course, the immediate question, how did this person get in? Was there a restricted entrance? Is there a buzz-in system that is so common now in public schools, but may not have been in place here? Lots of questions, very few answers. As the hours go by and the days go by, we'll get more answers. One positive note, if there's any here at all, Lester, is sadly we're now judging and critiquing school shootings by how few people are dead. That's a sad state of affairs, but when the police arrived and engaged the shooter, We now have 3, and I'm not going to say only 3 because that means nothing to those parents who have lost those children. But thank God the police arrived relatively quickly and engaged the shooter, and this is over.
Frank, well put. I have sat in this seat too many times covering instances like this. We're in that now agonizing period. We're waiting for answers. We know the 3 dead children were confirmed at a hospital. We don't know exactly what officers have found at the scene right now as they begin to secure that area. Obviously, you see children who have been safely let out. Let me go to NBC's Steve Patterson right now. Steve, you're hearing some from parents now, I understand.
Yeah, the one more important piece of reporting that I think is good for that community is to hear is that parents have reunited with their children. And you showed that images, of kids outside of that classroom ostensibly, safely, and meeting with their parents so they know where their kids are. We're actually hearing from some of those parents at the scene. I want to play this for you. Listen to this.
I called him to make sure it wasn't, or I thought maybe it was a bomb threat. And then there was so many police cars, and then the ambulances started coming away from the school, and that's when I had heard there was a school shooting, and it's just, there's no words, because they weren't letting the parents up there, so they were just running up the street.
Just the abject horror, the terror there, the relief, I think, as well. But we often hear this so many times in these school shootings. She thought it was a bomb threat and then finds out that it was an actual school shooting at her child's school. Heartbreaking to hear that, probably the first of many that we're going to hear from. Lester?
All right, Steve, thanks. Let me go back to